Senator Britt, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Chairman Smith, and thank you for your line of questioning. As the President and CEO of the Business Council of Alabama, this was one of the areas that we worked so diligently on. And so thank you for answering that so directly. Obviously, access to capital and making sure that the building blocks for success for people who want to start their own business, who want to be entrepreneurs, are there. And so I commend you for your continued work on that. I continue to be a strong advocate for our country's banking system, which gives so many hardworking families access to their American dream. From the largest banks, regional, down to the smallest local community banks and credit unions. Financial institutions of all sizes provide varied missions and services to their individual customers, their members, their communities. And CDFIs certainly play an important and critical role in this banking ecosystem. Thanks to the strength and efforts of our banking industry in Alabama, the number of unbanked and underbanked individuals in the state has decreased over the years. That being said, given the makeup of my state, 55 out of 67 of our counties are considered rural, and many Alabamians still lack access to typical financial services. CDFIs provide a host of services and product lines that not only help reach these underserved individuals, but also reinvest back into our local communities, expanding economic opportunity for all Alabamians and Americans. Current economic conditions and many of the overburdensome regulations we've seen over the last 2 years have hindered customers and small businesses' ability to access credit. But CDFIs, certified community banks and credit unions, have continued to do their part in offering affordable products that promote financial inclusion and asset building and expand access to our great capital markets. That's why Congress has funded grant programs and enacted tax credits specifically for CDFIs. For instance, the United Bank in Atmore, Alabama, recently received a new markets tax credit allocation and a Capital Magnet Fund award from the CDFI Fund. We are very proud of this. They will use these federal investments to continue to bring new jobs to Alabama, improve rural healthcare access, and promote more affordable housing. In addition to federal investments, we need to ensure that we are promoting policies that also allow these institutions to continue to attract private capital as well. My question is, can you just tell us some of the important things that we need to take into consideration to ensure that CDFIs continue to have access to private capital? And we'll start with you, Mrs. Cornelius, and work our way down.
I think one of the things that I'm most excited about for our Native communities are the proposed CRA changes.
Okay.
So when we look historically, there's only been one CRA investment within Native CDFIs or within our realm. So in looking at what that can be to have equity in the partnerships from banks, typically what we're finding is we're outside of everyone's footprint. So if we're outside of a foundation footprint as a rural organization, outside of larger banking institutions. So with that access, that's a whole new stream of capital that's really exciting. And I also think as we start working, we've been incredibly successful with social investors, social capital, and really bringing corporate partnerships along. I think is going to be intrinsic in how we web together all of our respective programs to really benefit communities to the best of our ability and leverage our opportunities and leverage our programs with each other.
Be able to scale that up, absolutely.
And
yes, please.
I think it would be helpful if we could have base funding for all CDFIs. All CDFIs are not created equal. It's an extremely competitive process. And so the ability to know as you're going about doing your strategic planning and you're doing your budget that you have this money and that you don't have to do the long, lengthy applications and things that you have to go through, that if it was in your base, it would make it a lot easier for us to do the work that we need to do unencumbered.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Similar to the prior comments in terms of getting to predictable funding from the CDFI fund, in addition to base funding, something of an on-ramp of perhaps 3 to 5 years for new and emerging or smaller CDFIs to access funding before joining the broader pool would be very helpful. The competitiveness has created a barrier to entry for those organizations who haven't already been in it. And even in the New Markets Tax Credit program, the successful applicants are within 4 or 5 points of the maximum. So if someone answers a certain bonus question no and loses those 5 points, they're out of the running automatically. So some of those, a few different ways to make it more predictable funding would be most helpful.
Okay. Madam Chair, do you mind if I ask one more question?
You have the latitude. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So in your experience, as we look at this, which federal programming has been the most successful in providing assistance to CDFIs so that they can reinvest in our community? And on that same note, if you don't think of that right off the bat, is there an existing gap or shortfall that we really need to take a look at and address? This is for everybody, if she'll let me.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Britt. One of the gaps that I keep seeing is when we think about these, we talked about the wealth gap and the wealth inequities, and one of the pathways for that is for entrepreneurs to own their own commercial real estate.
Okay.
And there is still such a gap for entrepreneurs to get the financing that they need to do that. And we have some programs in Minnesota that we're trying, but that gap, that 5% or 10% that the entrepreneurs that we support, the low to lower income entrepreneurs to come up with, is really difficult for them to achieve. I'd also say the ability to get new market tax credits. I am really grateful for Julia and her team because they have provided our CDFI with funding for us to be able to do real estate loans because we didn't have the amounts that we needed. And so how do we get more capital to more of these CDFIs that are doing the work so that we can get further and deeper into those communities?
Thank you. Ms. Delmark, do you, or Ms. Cornelius, either one?
I would like to echo new market tax credits are incredibly important to the development of Native communities. And fortunately, the CDFI fund has really looked at the on-ramping for what that looks like for Native CDFIs. So that's incredibly important. And I believe our partnerships, when you're talking about federal programs that are beneficial, we work hand in hand quite a bit with USDA, and a lot of the programs that they have really complement a lot of our services and or lending initiatives, which help propel our further development in these areas.
Thank you so much.
I would add, in addition to the others, again, that predictable capital is most important. And NeighborWorks America, for those who are fortunate enough to be members of it, provides some grant funding every year to members. And it's spread across capital and operating. And it is some of the most flexible and useful capital we've been able to access in recent years. And so things along those lines, supporting NeighborWorks America and increasing their appropriation would be helpful, as well as similar funding to that.
Well, this is so critically important and appreciate y'all being here. And Madam Ranking Member, thank you for your indulgence on that. Thank you.